Welcome to the training video for the ADM Ballistic Swing Ride. In this video, we will show you how to set up, operate, and tear down a ballistic swing. When you first get your ride, you will notice that the power cord comes with bare pigtails like shown here. It is recommended to use 50 amp service only to operate the ballistic. You can use many different types of 50 amp plugs. Shown here is a 50 amp twist lock plug, which is most common on large towable generators. To start the setup of the ride, first take the fencing off of the ride fence racks. The fence racks are shown here empty. After removing the fence, use the leveling jacks to level out the frame of the trailer. Before you start cranking the jack, make sure to remove the pin and slide the foot down as far as you can. All 4 jacks do not need to be on the same hole. First crank up the front jacks and then move to the back. Ensure that the tires are just barely off the ground, enough to spin them freely. After the tires are off the ground, use a level to make sure the ride is mostly level. This is very important to make sure the ride is level so that it swings and pivots properly. After the ride has been leveled and the tires have been lifted off the ground, it is time to take off the hitch tongue. Before removing the tongue of the ride, it is important to take off the electrical. First, you'll need to disconnect the emergency brake control. Then, coil up the rest of the cable and put it in the base of the ballistic trailer. After removing the electrical, it is time to disconnect the torque rods. The torque rods connect the frame of the trailer to the near front of the tongue. Do this by loosening the turnbuckle side first, removing the R-pins, and then sliding the torque rods out of position. Throughout the process of setting up your ride, it is incredibly important to put back the R-pins and any clevis pins where they came from so they don't get lost. Next, you'll need to remove the ride vehicle from the transport rack. Do this by pulling the R-pin out of the clevis pin and then remove the clevis pin. At the same time, you'll need to hold the chair swing as it's coming down. It is recommended to have a minimum of 2 people doing this process. We recommend starting with the outside chairs first on each side. After both outside chairs have come down, then do the top chairs. When removing the top chairs, it might be helpful to introduce a third person to ensure that the chairs don't bang into each other while taking them down. Repeat this step for the next 4 ride vehicles on the other side of the ride. Once all 8 ride vehicles are down, it is time to remove the transport rack. The transport racks are easily removed with loosening the bolt and then removing the clevis pin. Once again, put the clevis pin and the R pin back where it belongs so it does not get lost. Only after all 8 ride vehicles have been put down should you put down the outrigger legs. It is recommended once again to use 2 people for this process. The outrigger legs can be very heavy. Position 1 person up top to remove the pin and another person on the ground to lower the leg. Although it does not come with the purchase of your ballistic swing, we recommend that you make and use wooden blocks below the outriggers. Once the outrigger legs are down, you'll need to connect them to the frame of the ballistic trailer. On the passenger side of your ballistic swing, there is an equipment storage bin with bars for your outrigger legs. There should be 4 turnbuckle bars and 4 outrigger bars. To install these bars, first use the turnbuckle bar on the small side. After that has been installed but not tightened, then install the outrigger bar on the other side. Once the outrigger bar has been installed, turn the turnbuckle to pull inwards, not push outwards, pull inwards until snug. This doesn't need to be super tight, just snug. Once you've tightened the turnbuckle bar so it's snug, you might notice that the leg might be off the ground. If it is off the ground, place another piece of wood underneath of it. This will help keep the ride level in the next step. After all 4 outrigger legs have been installed and the turnbuckle bars have been tightened, it's time to lower the entire ride using the leveling jacks. Lower the leveling jacks so you don't feel any pressure on the jack. Once all of the pressure has been lifted off of the leveling jacks, reapply 1 or 2 cranks of pressure onto the leveling jacks. This will leave most of the weight of the ride on the outrigger legs, and only some of the pressure on the leveling jacks. After the outrigger bars, it's time to put up the platform so we can start assembling the sweeps. On the driver's side of the trailer, there'll be 2 bars. These bars hold the platform. Remove these bars and place them in the pegs to the left and to the right of the license plate holder. Once again, using 2 people, lift the platform up and place them on the platform support bars. In order to reach the end of the sweep arms, you'll need to extend this telescoping platform. Do this by removing the bolts at the end of the platform and simply push out the platform. Don't go too far as to hit the chair swings. You'll want to stay at least 8 inches away from the ride vehicle. The first thing you'll need to do is to remove the center hub transport bar. The center hub transport bar connects the spinning part of the central hub to the frame of Ballistic. You'll need 2 wrenches to complete this task. All you need to do is remove the bolt and the nut from the center hub, pivot the transport bar away from the center hub, and put the bolt, washers, and nut back on that transport bar, as shown here. Next, you'll need to free the sweeps from the upper sweep transport bars. There are 3 bars on each side. Remove the R pin at the top, take out the bar, and replace the R pin. Next, you'll need to connect the spreader bars to the sweep arms. Once again, remove the R pin, lift the spreader bar out of its holder, and connect it to the end of the sweep arm. It is important to leave the spreader bars with the turnbuckles for last. After all but the turnbuckle spreader bars have been installed, go back and install the first turnbuckle spreader bar. Once this has been connected, do not tighten. Move to the second spreader bar with the turnbuckle, attach that to the end of the other sweep arm, and tighten that one. This just needs to be snug, not very tight. Once you've snugged that turnbuckle, spin the ride back to the other turnbuckle and ensure that it is snug. This specific Ballistic has an additional lighting package. If your Ballistic has any additional lights or features, now would be the time to install it while the platform and the operator is up. While the small details are being handled up top, like additional lighting features, it would be a good time for the installer on the ground to remove the control panel from the base and place it at the perimeter of the ride where the fencing will go. This specific Ballistic has an outside control panel. Many Ballistic swing rides come with an inside control panel. If your Ballistic swing has an outside control panel, you'll need to connect the data cable to the electrical box on the Ballistic frame to the controller out near the fencing. After the installer on the platform is completed, it is time to hand down the transport bars, push the platform in, and fold the platform back down. At this point, assuming you've plugged in the Ballistic swing to a power source, the ride is ready to go. Open up the electrical box using a screwdriver, coin, or something similar, and turn all of the breakers on one at a time. Once all of the circuit breakers have been turned on, close the door to the electrical box and secure it shut. If your Ballistic has an outside control panel, this is how you operate it. Open up the top of the control panel to reveal the controls inside. On the outside of the panel, you have the red button, which is your emergency stop button. This can be activated by pushing in or turning it to the left to pull it back out of the stop position. The green and red buttons on the outside are for turning on and off the motor only. This does not start the ride up. Inside of the control box is a variable speed controller. In order for the ride to start, you'll need to turn on the on switch. Ensure that the dial is at 0 when you turn this switch on. To start the ride, turn the switch on, and then slowly turn the dial clockwise. It is important to turn the dial slowly so the ride doesn't jerk forward or cause the motor to be bogged down and trip an electrical circuit. If your ride has an inside control panel, you'll find the start, stop, and emergency stop buttons on the side of the electrical panel. To the left of the control panel, you'll see a variable hydraulic valve. This adjusts the speed just as the dial on the outside control panel adjusts the speed on the ride. Once the ride is in full operation, and please note this is not at full speed, you can turn off the switch without bringing the dial down to 0. But make sure that the dial goes down to 0 after you flip the switch. That way it is ready to go for the next ride. Once you're finished with operation for the day, the first thing you'll need to do is turn off every circuit breaker on the panel before you start dismantling the ride. Once again, do this one at a time. Dismantling the ride is quite obviously the exact opposite of assembling the ride. While it doesn't need to be done in this exact order, you'll need to remove the control console, put the platform back up, extend the telescoping platform, and dismantle all the spreader bars and sweeps. While you're dismantling the sweeps with the spreader bars, you can connect the transport bars to the sweeps. After all of the transport bars have been resecured to the sweeps, turn the ride so that 1 through 4 is in the front near the tongue and 5 through 8 is in the back. Next, you'll need to resecure your central hub transport bar. This is crucial to the longevity of your ride. Once everything in the platform is completed, push the telescoping platform in, replace the bolts, and slowly swing the platform down, once again using 2 people. The next step is to disconnect the outrigger legs and place them in transport position. In order to disconnect them, you'll need to use the leveling jacks to lift up the frame of the trailer. After you've lifted up the frame of the trailer, remove the turnbuckle bars and outrigger bars from all 4 outrigger legs. After all the legs have been put up, it is time to put the transport racks back in place so you can remount the ride vehicles. Starting with the 2 inside ride vehicles, swing and lift the chairs onto the rack and insert the clevis pin. Once the 2 inside ride vehicles have been racked, do the 2 outside ride vehicles. Once one side has been completed, go to the other side and complete the next 4 ride vehicles. If your specific ballistic has an outside control panel, now would be a great time to put that back before the fencing goes on. Before raising all 4 leveling jacks, you'll want to reinsert the tongue into the frame of the trailer. Once the tongue has been reinserted and the pin has been put back in place to hold the tongue in, you'll need to then connect the torque rods. Starting with a rigid torque rod, then followed by the turnbuckle torque rod. This turnbuckle should be tightened more than snug. The final step in tearing down your ballistic swing is raising all 4 leveling jacks.